Living green or sustainably is about more than saving on your electric bill and doing your part to protect natural resources. It is about a safer and healthier life for you and your family without sacrificing style, quality, or budget. This is a movement to provide all of us with clean air to breathe and water to drink, safe, healthy food to eat and places to live, and energy to run the places where we live, learn, play, and work. The Everyday Green Home Podcast helps you get the value of green for you, your family, and your community. Whether it's green homes, green living, or the people who make it happen, join me, Marla Esser Close, to learn how green and sustainability practices and products work for you and our world. Welcome. This is Marla, the Green Home Coach, here on the Everyday Green Home Podcast. I cannot believe it is November. I know we don't normally make these so they're not evergreen, but I'm just astonished that it's November already. But I am really excited to have Casey Gray from The Conscious Builder on the podcast today. And Casey, you are a bit north of us. Tell us a little bit more about you and where you are.
Yeah, Marla, thanks so much for having me on the show. I am coming to you from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And you were asking me before if it's winter here, and it did get cold, but it seems like summer's coming next week, or actually in a couple of days again. So those are the times when, we think about climate change, and when it gets warm, you're like, oh no, it's not so bad. But when it gets warm and cold when it's not supposed to, then you realize that, yeah, something's not right. I'm sure we'll get into that sort of stuff. A little bit about myself. I am the founder of The Conscious Builder. We have a podcast. We have a YouTube channel. I've been in the construction industry for over 17 years at this point, been in business over 10 years, stayed in Ottawa. I've been in Ottawa my whole life, and we've been growing and evolving, both myself and the business. And we've kind of carved a good little niche for ourselves in sustainable building. So whether that's Passive House or Net Zero R2000, which is a certification here, those are all buildings where we've kind of put ourselves into, and we continue to grow in that area. And we do that for renovations as well as custom homes. And we really go out there, and with our podcast and our YouTube channels, we're just sharing the exciting projects that we're doing. And we're talking to industry experts as well. And we're just out there trying to make the whole industry better, because we know that we can't do all the building, nor do we have to do all the building. But we just want to make sure that other people know how to build, and that by us, the biggest thing I get from all this actually is that I'm forced into this world with other people who are smarter and better than I am, that I get to learn from as well. So it's fun.
I hear you there. I learned so much from my podcast guests, and I feel so blessed to have met so many people that know so much. And I love, you probably experience this too as a podcast host, but you get to connect people. And I'll have somebody looking for a certain resource, and I'm like, oh, call such and such, she was on my podcast, or something of that nature. So it does afford us a really great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's been a lot of fun as well. So I hear you on that part loud and clear. So you mentioned the hot and cold weather, I get, how that's kind of crazy for Canada. And I'm in Oklahoma. So that's kind of normal for us. Our seasons are just bouncy anyway. But last week we had a record-setting ice storm with the leaves still on the trees, which means devastating damage. But, we had that happening at the same time as the wildfires in the West, hurricane down below. Matter of fact, that ice storm connected with the hurricane. So it strengthened it. And we had all these weather events going on at the same time, and they're all extreme. It has given us pause to think, to say the least. There's no real predictable pattern to it, except for the fact that it's unpredictable, I think.
Well, that's one of the things that I've learned from talking to other experts as well, is that, people were calling it global warming at first, right?
You're right.
But they've since changed it to climate change, because what we see now is the extremes.
Right.
And that in my industry of building homes makes it more difficult to build homes as well, because we already had extremes here in Ottawa. But when you get extremes within a season that you're not expecting it, like for example, here in the winter, we have more freeze thaw cycles now, which makes it difficult because for example, where I'm living right now, the foundation started to leak last year in the winter, but it wasn't because the grading was an issue or the waterproofing or damp proofing was done improperly. It was because we were having all these freeze thaw cycles. And what happened is you get all these layers of ice on top of the snow, and they ended up being sloped back towards the house. So they ended up basically giving the house a new grade, which did not work with the way it was actually built, right? And then all of a sudden you have a leaky basement, which has never been an issue before, and it never happened again ever after that. But that's just one example of things that start to happen. And it doesn't matter how well you build a house sometimes. I didn't build the house that we're in right now, but that can still be an issue.
We see that in Oklahoma and a lot of our roads and we're kind of known as the pothole capital of the US. But we're 110 degrees in the summer, and then we freeze, and we have a lot of ice here in the winter, and it's just that extreme. And you're right. It's much more challenging to build from both ends of the extreme. It can be done. I'm sure you're much better versed in that than I am. But when you do not pay as much attention to the quality and to the details, that's the first place where you see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things not working the way they should, or the quality not holding up. We're even experiencing some of that in our own house. So I hear you. And I'm one of the dangerous ones because I know enough to be knowledgeable, but not enough to do it myself. So they love me, I'm sure. Hopefully in a good way. So Casey, what got you into building in the first place? I know you've been doing it for quite a while.
Really, it was just what I was good at from high school. Nobody in my family was in construction. I went through high school thinking I was going to become an engineer because I wanted to build stuff, and I thought engineers built stuff, but I realized that they didn't. They design it, right? I wanted to be the hands-on person. So in high school, they ended up, I was going grade 9, 10, 11. Here, up until the year that I was in high school, they had OAC, so grade 12, and then OAC, which is grade 13 before you go to university. But they got rid of OAC that year that I went through. So everything was compressed and everybody was basically being forced to do 5 years and 4 years. And I was like, great, I don't really want to do 5 years of school anyways. So we were that first cohort to kind of deal with that. And we weren't prepared for it. So there's a lot of people that complain about it, but I was okay with that. And as part of that, I went through that thinking I was going to become a mechanical engineer. So I was doing all these university courses. But then I realized in grade, actually, I think it was grade 12, where shop class was my best class, grade 10, grade 11, that was what I was best at. I was high 90s. And in grade 12, they started to push apprenticeships. They had somebody come into the school and they started talking about the apprenticeship and how it would work. And then I was like, wait a second, I can get paid to basically go to school, but I don't actually have to go to school and sit in a classroom. I'm like, yep, that sounds like a good deal to me. So I remember that day I went home and I told my mom, I said, look, I think I want to do an apprenticeship. I don't want to go to university. This is obviously what I'm good at. And she was actually totally fine with it. She supported the decision. She thought it was a great idea. Obviously, she could see I was good at it. And then after that, all my university classes kind of just dropped because I stopped trying. So they all plummeted to just passing, essentially. I remember talking to my calculus teacher and saying, I'm not going to university. I'm doing this. I just need to pass. Can you make sure that I pass? I don't know if she just passed me, but I remember passing that class with 52%. But since then, went out, I knew I was very clear on what I wanted to do. Turned down a couple of jobs, but found a great renovation company. I worked for 7 years, learned a ton from two of the carpenters there. And I was always doing jobs on the side. I love the business side of thing. Eventually went off on my own, realized I knew nothing about business. I've made all sorts of mistakes over the last 10 years, but stuck with it. And ever since then, we've just been growing. So it's been a roller coaster to say the least, but construction is kind of what I feel like I've been pulled to, and it just keeps coming up. So it's what I'm sticking.
It's very clear that it's your calling. Yeah, I definitely see that. So I love the fact that you were experiencing this in school when you were still in high school. Although so many of our schools in the US have dropped a lot of their construction training, the more technical training or vocational training in high schools. And there's a big push right now. Matter of fact, I'm part of an effort that is really pushing to get careers in construction and the skilled trades back in front of high school students. And it's really kind of coalesced with so much debt for students to go to university and colleges. And so there's been we're a huge labor shortage here in the skilled trades. Matter of fact, many of our skilled trades in the US, and I suspect some of this is happening in Canada too. We're graying out and there's nobody bringing up the backside. And, that's crazy. So there's a big push afoot right now in the US, especially with the National Association of Home Builders, to help students connect with those resources. And our local group here, we have a professional women in building group here that puts on an event annually to help high school students see and connect with all these great opportunities. And like you said, the apprenticeships and the training that so many are not aware of. And so I'm excited that you had that opportunity and that it put you in the right place.
Yeah, there's no shortage of work in construction, especially if you're getting into renovations and stuff as well. I think one thing that I follow a lot of is just technology and where it is. And there's a lot of really cool things happening, like 3D printing houses, mostly for places where there'd be a big natural disaster and they can go in and print a whole bunch of houses that wouldn't really work well for where we live in our climates, for example. But I could see that having a big disruption on the industry. However, there's always going to need to be renovations done in old houses, right?
Yes.
There's for technology to be able to go in and unless, we're designing robots that are basically like people going in and doing demolition, doing everything, which is we're a long ways away from. There's going to be lots of work and there is lots of work. And like in where we are in Ottawa, everyone's behind at this point. Like we're telling people we recently hired somebody to help with the sales and customer service side of things. And we have over 80 leads that we're talking to right now of people that are interested in, they're at different levels, but those are people who are interested in doing some sort of work. And we're like a small company in terms of construction companies, right? But, maybe a little bit larger because there's a lot of small renovation companies that are 2-3 person operations. We're bigger than that, but that just gives you an idea of what's possible, right? So if you're actually good at what you do, there is a lot of work out there. So I definitely hope that people don't look the other way and look to construction if it is something that they're interested in doing.
So you bring something up really interesting with renovations. I think a lot of other people feel the same way, that renovations can actually be much more challenging than new build because of the unpredictability and because of all the things. So you've got to be able to think on your feet. You've got to know all the different kinds of solutions to approach a problem when you run into it. And sometimes I'm sure the situations arise where you can't wait to go think and make a decision because there's something very urgent about it. I've got several good friends back when I lived in St. Louis that are in the remodeling business. But I think one of the things that has astonished people the most is that you can actually certify as sustainable, green, energy efficient, choose your certification path, a renovation and a remodel project. And I think a lot of people don't think of that. They kind of think that they just have to remodel.
Yeah.
But I'm sure a lot of your work ends up that way. How do you connect those dots?
With the certification process?
Well, not even necessarily doing a certification, but building to that level.
Yeah.
And then hopefully if you need to or can certify, you have that opportunity.
Yeah. So we do a lot of renovations. They're not all necessarily complete home renovations, like retrofits. We are doing one right now on an old masonry building, like it's masonry construction. It's not wood frame construction.
Right.
And we are doing what's called a chainsaw retrofit, where we basically cut the eaves off the roof and we bring insulation up the exterior and up over the roof and everything. So that's the most extreme renovation we've done from an energy retrofit. And it has not been easy. Like the team has been frustrated with it. I've been frustrated. The homeowner's been frustrated. The architect's been like we've all just been frustrated because there's so many things that you can't figure out ahead of time until you get into it. So you're right to say, it's harder. Like I always tell people, like younger people who are getting into construction, I recommend that they go find a small company that does major renovations, because they will learn way more ripping apart a 100-year-old house and adding to it or doing that than they'll ever learn building a new home. Now, building a new home has different level of skill required, but it is easier, in my opinion, to manage and to keep that project flowing than it is a smaller renovation or an addition project.
I could see where there's more predictability.
Exactly. And it's usually, depending on where you're building, you might have a little bit more room to work too. But we do some infills where it's pretty tight. But some of these old houses are pretty close together. And you're dealing with neighbors. And if people don't get along with the neighbors, that's a whole other level. But from the energy side, well, yeah. So you can definitely get certifications. And a lot of them will have different requirements if it's a renovation versus a new build. So you could get the certification and the house may not perform as well as a new build, but you've still got that certification. The big thing that we build and renovate for is comfort, though. We're aiming aiming for comfort. And by default, when you have a comfortable home, you will have an efficient home. However, it depends on what the scale of the renovation is. Not everybody can afford to do the whole house all at once. So maybe we're doing one level at a time. Maybe they just need to have their kitchen and main floor done to start, and we do what we can. Maybe some people might get us to do the exterior, at which point we can add exterior insulation and new siding. But it really depends on what they want to get done. Like I said, this is the job that we're doing right now is the first time we've actually done the whole house. And even in this case, we're not necessarily doing all the interior finishing. The homeowner might be doing that himself. So we do a lot of that. And we have a lot of projects that we don't necessarily showcase because our specialty for the most part is really in envelopes and making sure that people have airtight, well insulated, comfortable homes with HVAC systems that work well. And then they'll take on the finishing portion, or maybe they might sub it out, but they'll kind of manage that part themselves because they understand that the stuff that you don't see is the most important and they don't know enough about it to do it. So that's why they bring us in. That's where a lot of companies miss the ball, I think, unfortunately, is that they put so much focus on what you see and they forget about what you don't see. And it's not until it's too late that people start to feel it, right? And as cheesy as it is, it's the same for human beings, right? If you focus only on the outside, you're not going to be feeling very good. But if you focus on the inside, you will be feeling much better and much more comfortable. And that's what we do. So all the stuff that you see that you don't see that's behind the drywall, behind your cladding is the most important part of your house.
So hold that thought, folks. We'll be right back. Hey, this is Marla Close, the Green Home Coach, and I am the author of Living Green Effortlessly, Simple Choices for a Better Home. And in this book, besides talking about a bunch of stuff about green and sustainability products and practices you can easily take in your home, I also talk about home maintenance and how important this is to having a home that serves you rather than you serving it. Seasonal home maintenance checklists are a big part of this, and I teamed up with colleague Tina Gleisner from Home Tips for Women to use her maintenance checklist, actually included in the book, starting on page 96. And if you have the book, look them up. But I wanted to give you a brief excerpt from the book to get you excited about why home maintenance checklists, I know that doesn't sound very exciting, but why they are so important. So, maintaining a home is actually a 3-part ongoing process: inspect, maintain, and update. To help you keep track of what you've done and plan to do, make notes on the checklist. First, inspect. If you've only got an hour to spare, pick one exterior side of the house or one room inside to inspect. Note the date you did this on the checklist and flag items needing maintenance or repairs so you can schedule time or make a list for your handyman or handy woman. Second, maintain. Keep your home safe, such as smoke detector batteries. Keep your home energy efficient, like furnace air filters, and prolong the useful life of many home features, like caulking bathroom tile. Write it down when you complete a task, keeps you from guessing later on. And third, update. Take advantage of improved materials and fixtures. Upgrade to new building codes, and evaluate when it makes more sense to make an improvement rather than repair, such as replacing a bathroom floor rather than repairing the grout. Check out the book or give me a holler and I'll hook you up online to get the maintenance checklist for yourself. If you'd like to have the entire book, please go to livinggreenbook.com for a multitude of ways to purchase it for yourself. Thanks again. This is Marla, the Green Home Coach. So back on the Everyday Green Home with Casey Gray, and we were just having this really great offline discussion about this whole idea of what you were talking about with renovations and how the only thing that could come to mind when you were talking about this whole house energy renovation that you're doing was putting a sweater around the house. And somebody has used that terminology, and I can't think who it was. But I have this very visual image of wrapping this big sweater around this house, but I guess that's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the best analogy is actually, it's beyond a sweater. It's the sweater and the windbreaker.
Ooh, that's even better. I like that. The parka.
Yeah. So if you think about a jacket, if you have a big parka and you turn and you face the wind and you have the zipper open, it doesn't matter how big that parka is, it's useless because all that wind is just blowing right into your jacket. So you need to make sure that you zip it up. So that's a big part of the comfort, right? And that's what a lot of people, even people that have been in the construction industry for a long time, do not understand, is that there's a difference between a vapor barrier and an air barrier. And people usually understand a weather barrier, right? But that first two that I mentioned, those are often misunderstood because a lot of times it's the same thing, right? So they've been using a vapor barrier, but also calling it an air barrier, but then poking all sorts of holes through it with their electrical plugs and their screws and light switches and other, wires and plumbing, all sorts of stuff just going through this thing and not really sealing it up properly. So those are things that we think about throughout the process.
And they sound so common sense. And I was telling you during the break that one of my mottos has been to help people learn how to have a home that looks great and performs well. And with existing homes in particular, especially if you're buying an existing home, you have no idea if it performs well till you move in and you feel it and you experience it. And all of a sudden you discover that you have a bedroom you can never use because it's too hot in the summer and it's too cold in the winter. And you had no warning because the inspector checked the heating and cooling system and said, yep, it works. But nobody helps to go the next step. And I know I will not buy another home without doing an energy assessment, just so I know. If you know what you have to deal with, you can plan for it.
Well, yeah, exactly. And beyond that, when you get an energy assessment, this is an important fact that I think a lot of people overlook, is that when it comes to your heating and cooling system, most homes, at least where we are, I would assume that it's the same where you are based on your climate. Most homes have oversized systems.
Yep. Oh, totally. And nobody understands why that's such a big deal.
So I don't know, have you talked about it much on your podcast before? Because I can give a brief summary.
It's been a long time, so go for it.
All right. So what happens in a home that has an oversized system is you get something that's called short cycling. So your thermostat is generally in the middle of your home somewhere. So if you have a basement and a 2-story home above that, and then you have 3 stories, essentially your thermostat will be in the middle of your main floor and your furnace is somewhere in the basement. And obviously you have your AC outside, but that just is the compressor and then it goes to the coil inside. Air handler, let's call it, in the basement. Now, the middle of your house, if your system is oversized, will get up to temperature or down to temperature if you're running the air conditioner quicker if it's too big and when I say quicker, I mean quicker than what it needs in order to reach the far bedroom that you had mentioned.
Because you've got air that has to go further to heat and cool that part.
And the ductwork needs to be preconditioned. And by the time, if it comes on and then turns off in 5 or 10 minutes, that ductwork in the furthest room never really got up to temperature and was never able to provide the heat for that room needed. And maybe there's even a big window over there. Maybe it's a room that's over the garage, and the room over the garage, the floor isn't insulated. So it really has 5 exterior surfaces as opposed to 4. So there's all these things to consider, right? Whereas if you have a properly sized system, the system will run longer and it actually ends up saving you energy because you don't end up turning the temperature up to try and heat up the far rooms of your house in the middle of the winter, right? So you actually want your system to run longer and have it sized properly. To give you an idea, we have 1,000 square foot cottage coming up, and we're doing it to net zero standard, which is a new building standard here in Canada, being brought forth by CHBA, Canadian Home Builders Association. And I think it's a great standard. It's not extreme. It's based on modeling and how big of a solar system you can put on. But this cottage is only going to need about 16,000 BTUs. Explain,
give us a relative, something to compare to so people can know how.
Yeah, so 16,000 BTUs is pretty small. A lot of homes that I go into, small 1,000 square foot bungalows, will have 96,000 BTU furnaces. They don't need that, but that's people look at it's just huge, right? So in this case, the mini split systems that you see on the walls. So you can get the cold climate heat pump. So they'll heat to minus 25 degrees Celsius. I don't know what it is Fahrenheit, but yeah, so it's cold, right? So those will heat well. Those units, the smallest they go, I believe, is 9,000. So 2 of those will heat this whole cottage.
Nice.
Obviously, you have distribution issues if you're getting into just wall mount units, but that's a different thing that we won't get into. But that gives you an idea of how much energy we could be wasting by having a larger furnace in your home than what you need.
And in the south part of the United States and further southern climes, we have an additional issue with oversized units for air conditioning, because when they short cycle, they don't take out enough humidity.
Yep, that's a really good point.
Now we have a humidity issue. And it's crazy because some of the homes that are being built to very high standards in the hot, humid climates literally can't, because of the way the federal regulations have changed, they can't get a small enough unit. So they're having to be very creative. Mini splits have been a big saving grace for a lot of that. But so here's the point, listeners. The way that we do it as part of the standard or norm is the way we've been doing it for a long time. And we know a lot more now. It's all back to science, which that in and of itself is a hot topic right now. I'm trained as an engineer, so I've got lots of science behind me. But there is a very rigorous building science protocol, and there's some great education online if you want to learn more about building science. I don't know, have you ever used construction instructions, Casey?
No, I have not. I am familiar with it. We're kind of working on our own thing here called the Conscious Builder Academy. So,
oh, nice.
Keep your eyes open and ears open.
Well, the nice thing about this resource, and hopefully with yours, is that it's something that is accessible to anybody in the building industry or anybody that just wants to learn something about a specific part of the building process itself. For people like me, I don't actually get to swing a hammer, but I'm around jobs a lot and want to be able to, assess them correctly and understand how the process works and if it's done correctly. So things like these tools in the one you're building are a great asset to those of us that want to understand the process, but don't necessarily do it. So there's some great tools out there, but building science is important. I mean, it's like any other science. There's a lot to be learned in it, and changing up your materials and the way you install or apply those materials makes a huge difference. As I know you have, just in our last podcast that we did together, we got into a little bit of that, and there's just so much to know. And I think everybody kind of assumes that it's just nail up some 2x4s and put some stuff on the side and go. And it's not.
It's kind of like nobody's going to go out there and build their own car, right? But everyone thinks they can build their own house. But there's more to it than, yes, you can build a structure that, will not fall over if you follow the building code, right?
Right.
But do you really understand how the whole system works? And that's where I have nothing against people who want to build their own home. I think it's a great thing to do if you have the time and the skills and the ability to build your own home at least once in your life. I think everyone should do it. I think it's a great thing to say you've done, right? Or if you're able to live in that home, then great. I'm not, but there's a lot of people that don't want to do that. That's why they hire us.
That's why we have builders.
Right? Or if they come to us and we'll help educate you, right? And you can build your own house. That's why we put so much stuff out there. But at the end of the day, even in my industry, I'm not going out there and I'm trying to do everything myself. I am hiring people who I know are better than me at certain parts of it. Every single home that we build, we bring on an energy advisor. Doesn't matter how many homes I've built, how many times I've done this, I'm still going to hire an energy advisor. So why wouldn't the average homeowner hire an energy advisor when they're going to do work on their house? To me, that's common sense, right? Because that piece of information alone, the couple $1,000s that you might spend on that will potentially save you thousands of dollars in the long run.
Yes.
And give you a more comfortable home. So to me, that's always the first step, but you always want to make sure that you have everyone working together. So whoever's managing your project, and your energy advisor, and whoever's designing your project. So construction, the science part, and the designing part.
So I love the fact, because your whole name, the Conscious Builder, is to me all about making conscious decisions, conscious choices, rather than just letting them happen. And, we all want to trust the system, but you also want to trust the people that have the knowledge and the decision-making capabilities to do what's important to you. And that's one of the biggest things I think really come to teach is, think about what your values are, what's important to you, your priorities, and then work with somebody that's going to support those. Mm-hmm. And, having a healthier, more efficient home that is comfortable. Those are the three biggies right there. That's what we really all want in a home. I don't know anybody that I could walk up to and say, hey, do you want a home that's really going to be hot and cold and make you sneeze a lot and you're going to have to work a lot at? And they're going to be no.
You want an unhealthy, inefficient, and uncomfortable home?
Right.
Like everybody, yeah. It's true, right? So, and that's the thing, but most people live in unhealthy,
Yeah.
inefficient, and uncomfortable homes.
Boy, have we seen that in spades with COVID. I mean,
Yeah.
we are putting the test to our homes like we've never done before. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe to close that out, like if somebody's out there going to do a renovation or build a home or something, I believe that the best way to do it is called an integrated design process. So you bring all of the people on board right from the start. And I understand, so I'm the contractor. People don't want to bring on a contractor without seeing a price. But at the end of the day, if your contractor is involved sooner than later, they will save you money. Like if you get a contractor, that's one of the reasons why the way we do our contracts is just open book. We charge our percentage, we have our fees, and we have our labor rates for work that we do. But everything else we share. We're going to get quotes, and we have contractors that we trust, obviously, that we'll recommend. But if you need quotes for something, we're going to go get them and we'll work with you. But the idea is that we get all the information so that you can make a conscious decision to what your point that you were saying before, is because what I think is what's important to me isn't necessarily what's important to you either, right? So there's certain things we're going to have might have, similar values, but we might have different priorities, right? In how we get to those values, which I get, right? So we're not going to say you have to build this way, or you have to build that way, or you have to use this product or this or that product. We're going to say, here's the options. Here's why we like this option, but here's all of them, right? And if they choose, if we like option 1, but they choose option 2, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. It's their house at the end of the day. We're helping guide through the process.
5 myths of green homes are 5 things that you probably believe about green homes that may be costing you thousands of dollars. Which myth do you hear the most? Get your copy of 5 Myths at greenhomecoach.com and click on the button for 5 Myths of Green Homes. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Green Home Coach and let me know the green home myth you hear the most. I'll also share tips, products, and resources. Be sure to download your copy of 5 Myths of Green Homes now, and then check back to learn more. I'm so astonished at how many people have challenges when they're building a home, or the builder's building the home, simply because they didn't bring everybody together. They didn't plan, and the stakeholders aren't all on the same page. And that happens, unfortunately, a lot more than we realize. So
yeah, the biggest thing that my team and I manage is expectations. A lot of people have certain expectations when it comes to building their house. And there's some projects and some people that reach out that we just walk away from because they have unrealistic expectations. And we're just like, You try to explain and go over some stuff with them. And if you just don't get a good feeling, it's like, no, we're going to move on. Like they have something set in their mind, and we know it's not going to work out well. But, when you talk to somebody and they're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like they really we're not just we're going to share everything. We're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. If anything, we're trying to open their eyes, right? Here's what you need to expect. Here's what's happening right now in the industry. Lumber prices are through the roof. Trades are busy. Like here, I'm not going to tell you I can build your house in 6 months because there's a good chance I can't, because there's delays everywhere. Right. Yeah. So, and I can't tell you that the price I give you now is going to be the same price in 4 months from now, because the lumber is going to change in a week from now, let alone 4 months from now. So, yeah,
I've seen builders here that are putting some special clause in their contracts for lumber pricing because it's so volatile right now. Mm-hmm. Great time to investigate using alternatives to lumber.
Yeah.
Other building systems, et cetera. So, I'm working on an insulated concrete form project here, and that's saved us a lot of wood. That was a nice side benefit. So definitely.
We've done a couple we do foundations with that, and we've done a couple full houses with that.
Yeah, this is the second one I've worked on. I think it's been a long time, but it's fun to see it all going up, and gosh, it's comfortable. It's big, huge kudos for that. Well, tell us, as we're wrapping up, how we can find your podcast and your YouTube channel, because you have gobs and gobs of wonderful information on there. And I also want you to share the 3-day cottage program with our listeners.
Sure. Obviously, if you go to theconsciousbuilder.com, everything is linked there. But if you go on YouTube and search The Conscious Builder, it'll pop up. Or our podcast is The Conscious Builder Show as well. It should be, as far as I know, on all of the podcast players. If not, if you're trying to find it on one and it's not there, please let me know.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So you can find us there. We definitely encourage interaction. Like if you have a question, reach out to us. I've started answering questions for people that are putting in comments on different videos here and there. So we're creating more videos and we'll be calling people out who have asked questions, because in my experience, if you have a question, there's definitely somebody else who's thinking the same thing. So you might as well ask it so that we can help more people, and we'll answer it. We'll get it out there. If I don't know the answer, I will find somebody who does know the answer. And as part of that, on our YouTube channel, we are doing like our first official series. We do share a lot of information about a lot of our projects, but we're actually creating a series for what Marla mentioned, the 3-day cottage. And we're not going to build it in 3 days. That's kind of why we named it that. To some extent, it gets people's attention, but there is a joke behind that. And if you watch a series or if you watch some of our teaser videos, you will find out that joke and why it's called the 3-day cottage. But ultimately, this is inspired by Kim, who was a homeowner who reached out to us and said, I want to build a cottage. I want it to be net zero. And I've been watching your YouTube channel and I want to figure out how to make this happen. So we're helping her. We're making this happen with her. And I say with her because she's doing a lot of the work herself. So we're kind of helping with the envelope and we're helping her navigate the process, but she's going to be doing a lot of the finishing. She's been building light fixtures. She just loves being creative and hands-on. So there's a good chance that she's going to be helping us framing. It's probably going to be my brother and I up there framing, and she's going to be there. She's like, I'll come and help you, right? Be your gopher and help you. I'm like, all right, that'll save you, from me having to have a helper there that you have to pay for. Right. So it's not something we do in all of our projects that, we're having fun. We're doing a YouTube series with this. So it's a little bit different than our typical project, but it's going to be a good series. It'll release sometime next year. We're aiming for the spring. It kind of depends on when things get finished. Maybe we have to do 2 seasons, but in either case, it's going to, why I think it's so great is that she is like most people, right? Like, yes, we build $1 million plus homes, but a lot of people aren't going to hire us and build $1 million home, but a lot of people can build a cottage, right, themselves, or
right.
And especially now, right? Who doesn't want a cottage? Like everyone's looking for cottages, right? So she's making this happen, and she's putting her sweat and tears and, getting dirty and making this happen as well. So I think it's going to be great because a lot of people will be able to put themselves into her shoes. So subscribe and you'll be able to follow us.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I cannot thank you enough for sharing what is going on in your world and your building philosophies and the exciting stuff that you guys are doing right now. And gives me a lot of hope that we have so many people that we may not be, huge companies yet, but we have so many people pushing this ball forward and just getting out there and doing it, taking action, learning while we're going and learning more and sharing it.
Yeah. The majority of the population is small companies, right? The economy is driven by small businesses. So it's not going to be one big company that's going to make a change anywhere. I think, obviously there's companies that have done that and can do it mostly in the tech industry. But now it's like we all have to push this forward. We all have to do our part. This is how we are doing our part. You're obviously doing your part with everything that you're doing and your podcast as well. And if we just have more and more people doing this, then that's what's going to help us all become more conscious, which is really just a state of being aware, right? So we don't know, but all of a sudden we hear something and it clicks. So enough of it out there, eventually enough people it'll click with, hopefully.
So share it, folks. Share the love. The more that we know, the more that we can share, and keeps on going.
Yep.
Casey, it has been so much fun to have you on, and we look forward to hopefully having another conversation in the spring to learn more about the 3-day cottage.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Marla. I appreciate it.
Okay. Y'all take care now. That wraps this episode of the Everyday Green Home Podcast. Ready to use what you learned? Get the show notes with all the resources mentioned in this episode. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening and for leaving a review. And remember that living a little better and greener is easier than you think.